Hello everybody, welcome to Market Failure, part 2 of the e-lecture. So in this e-lecture, we'll be looking at policy effectiveness type of question. So in this lecture, I'll be going through what is meant by this type of question. Second, how to go through or how to recognize, identify this type of question. And third, what is the general structure to or approach to answer this kind of question. So these are three things that I'll be going through in my lesson. So apparently content covered, there will be no content like econs concept to be covered because I'm looking at the structure of answering this kind of question. Then for the content kind of questions, like for example, how does tax help to decrease the consumption of cigarettes or beer or alcohol? This kind of question or the content you can find out from the lecture notes itself in the market failure lecture notes. So I leave it to you to own the responsibility of learning. So the content wise, please read it out in the lecture notes. Here, okay, so what is meant by this type of question? So usually this kind of policy effectiveness kind of question, it requires students to assess the effectiveness or the desirability of a policy. So the word policy here, it does not limit to the policy or the action taken by the government. It can also be the causes of action taken by the individuals or the firms to pursue their own self-interest. So it can be the action taken by the firms or individuals. So apparently for this type of question contain four elements. Someone. When we refer to someone, it could be the economic agent. Here it refers to the government, producer of firms, and the consumer, like what we say individual, or rather the household, the other consumers. Doing something. For example, government, we can talk of the policy. Of firms, something could be strategies. For example, strategies taken to increase the total revenue. And household, like what are the actions taken by the household to achieve their own self-interest. Then the third part, so went through first, second, third. So the third element is to solve some problem or to achieve some goal. So this is usually what we meant by the objective of the action taken. After all, everything, the fourth part, which is the last part, is usually the set of the criteria to judge the desirability of the policy. This is actually the evaluation part. So you need to evaluate the policy to assess whether it is feasible or effective or not. So this is what we meant by policy effectiveness type of question. So how to identify this type of question? Here, because the content to be covered is actually market failure, so I have some examples of some market failure kind of question, but in fact it does not only limit to the content market failure. It can be also quite a bit about macroeconomics as well on the policy effectiveness type of question. So here, looking at 5 questions, I'll give you 1 minute to look through. Can you identify the differences between the policies? What are the similarities? And is it possible to categorize the questions together? So I leave you 1 minute to read the question, then we'll go through together. So, when you look through the questions, what are the similarities among the question? Okay, first, like what we mentioned, it is about market failure, the content to be covered in the answer for all the questions. Second, it is about policy making. But what are the differences? Is it talking about only one policy? Or are the questions asking about more than one policy? If you were to look carefully, you will realize that the first question, though, evaluate the effectiveness of only using ERP as a mean to control the congestion level. But the word here, only, meaning that you should not only be looking at one policy. In fact, you should actually compare to one or to two policy. Altogether will be more than two policies to do a comparison, and to highlight why you should only use this type of policy or this policy. Then is there any similar question that you can see from the 5 questions here? The closest question, or rather I can categorize them together, will be the last question. Assess whether shutting down, which is one action taken by the firms or the factories, is the best way to curb the river pollution. So here, similarly, only one policy is being mentioned in the question itself. But the word here, only way, actually give you an idea that you should compare to more than 3 policy, and to identify that why this action is the best way. So there must be a comparison of at least 3 policies to highlight the word only and the best. Okay, then you will realize that for this question, discuss whether Singapore should use pollution permits to address market failure in Singapore. So obviously here you are looking at only one policy mentioned in the question. So what you need to do is to highlight the pros and cons, or rather you can have the theses and antitheses. Later on, I'll go through the general structure of answering this kind of question. So for this question, it is only asking about one policy. Then maybe for evaluation part of this question, what you can do is to compare to other policy and to highlight that this policy using the pollution permit may not be the best policy. Okay, this is for evaluation, whereby you compare to other policy. But apparently the content-wise will be talking about only one type of policy here. Then lastly, if you were to look at the last, the third and the 5th question, so assess the feasibility of using market-based solution, so on and so forth. And the second part will be evaluate the policies. Here, the word policy, market-based solutions, you are actually required to compare among the policy. So what is the main difference between this kind of question in rectangle and the question in circle? The question in circle is also similarly you are actually comparing the policy, but here this question you are supposed to identify that why this is the best. Here this is just comparing the policy and to give an evaluation, maybe in your own opinion which is the best. So this will be a good evaluation at the end of the answer. Okay, so now I'm going to move a little bit faster. Here, look at this kind of question, the triangle. You are asked to look at one policy. So what is the general approach to answer this type of question? Okay, you can actually use something called TAE. What is TAE? This is the thesis, antithesis, plus your evaluation. So to use this approach, you must be very clear of what is meant by the thesis, what is meant by antithesis in the first place, which I will go through later on. So it is very important that in this type of question, right, answer must be balanced. So you must show the pro and the cons of the policy. So to show the both sides of the issue. So first, when you begin, right, this must be a policy. Remember, an action taken by somebody to solve a problem. So you identify the issue in the first place. Then you do have a policy. You call it policy A, let's say. And this is being asked in the question. So what you need to do is to identify the thesis, which I will go through later on. Later part, it will be the antithesis. You can actually have more than one argument for each side. Then lastly, what you need to do is to draw a conclusion. In your own opinion, do you think for the context itself, in the context of Singapore or China or India or Europe, the policy, is it feasible? Can it be carried out or not? Is this desirable? So the limitation of the policy, which could be form part of the antithesis here. So I will talk about it later on. Okay, so general structure, let me highlight again. It will be, first identify the issue. This is your introduction. Then second part, what is the thesis? Third part, antithesis. Lastly, this will be your conclusion. But of course, here you can actually form more than one paragraph. Similar for this side. Alright, so how do you answer what is meant by the thesis? Here, the thesis argument always focus on one reason, or it could be actually more than one reason, why the policy may be effective. And it could be using the explicit explanation of the theory to explain. Using a theory to explain how it will achieve the objective or to solve the problem. So this is also using the theory. For example, you are talking about using taxes to reduce pollution, to tax on the firm production and to reduce pollution. So what you need to do is, since taxes and subsidy, as what we learned, they are market-based solution. So by right diagram here, always make it a point to draw diagram to illustrate your point, especially on taxes and subsidy. So these are actually good area for you to gain high marks, because diagram wise, if you ask any person who don't study econs, right, they can explain to you, to tell you that taxes, it will increase the cost and hence people will not buy it. But as an econ student, show your understanding, show off your knowledge by drawing the diagram to show that this is how different I am as compared to the other people who never studied econs before. So this is what we meant by thesis argument. Focus on one reason why the policy may be effective, and to use theory to explain how it can actually achieve the objective. Then if this is the case, how should you write antithesis? So antithesis, what is meant by antithesis? Okay, antithesis, you should be looking at what are the limitations of the policy, why the policy, explain why the policy may not be desirable. So these are the areas, an acronym to help you to look at the different area of antithesis. For example, feasibility. What is meant by feasibility? It actually refers to the extent which the policy can be carried out. So effectiveness, how about effectiveness? Effectiveness actually refer to the extent when, if the policy is being implemented, can it achieve, if implemented, can it achieve the main objective? So for example, if you want to say that using taxes to reduce pollution, is it effective or not? So you might want to look at the production of the good, the demand of the good, whether is it price elastic or price inelastic. If the demand of the product itself is price inelastic, if I increase by imposing more indirect subsidy, the supply curve will shift up, the price will increase, but the extent of the decrease in the quantity demanded is less than proportion, because the demand itself is price inelastic, and hence this may not be effective. Another example that you can use is maybe cigarettes or alcohol to determine whether the product is it price elastic or whether the demand of the product, is it price elastic or inelastic, and to explain whether if the policy is being implemented, can it achieve the main objective. Then the next one will be appropriateness. So in terms of whether the policy is it appropriate to tackle the root issue or the root cause of the problem. So does it actually tackle the root cause of the policy? Then side effect, in terms of when policy is being implemented, is there any side effect? Side effect could be any side effect to the consumer, for example, or to the producer. So maybe side effect to the other economic agent in the economy. Then lastly will be the time lag. So time lag in terms of if you pass down a rule or laws, regulation in a way, you have to go through quite a lot of levels for approval. So maybe after some time you realize that the policy is not effective already because time is wasted. So actually for this part on time lag, right, you may read up in your market failure notes under government failure. So this is one of the area that you can read up to recap on your concept. Then alright, so this is what I meant by thesis and antithesis argument, but we only look at one type of policy whereby it is looking at essay question asking about one policy. How about two policies? How to approach this kind of question? Similarly, as what we have identified, always remember what is the issue in the first place and therefore identify the objective to be achieved. So here we are looking at two policy. So we have policy A, policy B. So similarly, if you were to refer to just now, whereby when talk about looking at one policy, yes. So what is the thesis and antithesis? Or rather, maybe you can look at another way to explain. It is for you to look at how policy A works. So is there any limitation of policy A? So when we talk about how policy A works, right, it will be using our econs concept to explain. Use a diagram if necessary. Similarly, over policy B, it is the same thing. How policy B works and what are the limitation of policy B. So this is your structure, and lastly your conclusion. So you need to do some evaluation. What is your stand? Do you think policy A is better than policy B? Which policy is better? Which policy is better? So which one do you recommend? And give your reason why. Maybe, for example, in the context of Singapore, you think that policy B is better. But if you were to put this policy in the context of Malaysia, maybe it is not so effective. This would be one of the reasons, but of course, it is very important to have a context and to explain appropriately. So these are the evaluation. Always remember, it is very important to give a stand. And overall, some of the things that I want to highlight. Remember, every time we look at a policy, A or B, we'll be looking at a balanced argument, whereby I look at the pro and cons of the policy. Now let us look at the to summarize everything in terms of structuring your essay. What you will need to do is, first, this will be your intro, remember, introduction. Then your second paragraph, you'll be looking at policy A. Then to identify that 2A, how the policy work. 2B, how the policy, the limitations of the policy. So this essentially could be easily 2 to 3 paragraph. Then here, policy B. So 3A, how it work. 3B, the limitation. So around here, it will be 5 paragraph in total, and the last paragraph, or rather the 6th paragraph, I name it 4, it will be your conclusion. So 6 paragraph, 1.5 page. For 50 marks question, I think this is good enough. Okay, so this is a policy, or rather the structure to answer 2 policy kind of question. How about 3 policy? Give you 5 seconds to think about how you will write a 3 policy. How do you structure your answer for a 3 to answer this kind of question? Okay. So if you already realize that it's actually similar to these 2 policy, frankly speaking, but what you need to do here is to show your policy C. That's it. So policy C. Then how do you structure? Similarly, what you can do is, here, this will be my first issue, or rather, highlight the issue or the introduction, similarly. Second part, 2A, 2B. Third part, similarly, 3A, 3B. And the fourth part will be over here, to talk about, like what we say, how policy C works. A bit long-winded here, but at least these are the important things to remind you. Limitation of policy, to show awareness that you know that there are limitations. So here will be 4A, 4B. Then the last part, this will be your conclusion. But conclusion can be quite different here, because since we are comparing 3 policy, especially for this kind of question whereby they are actually asking about, okay, let me find for, yes, whereby they are actually asking about how do you identify that is the only, then this is the best policy, so you have to compare to among 3 policy. So which is the best? What you need to do is, here, because I'm comparing 2, so which policy is better? Here, if I compare among 3, which policy is the best? I mean, of course, this point, it depends on the question that they are asking for. Of course, there will be people or students who actually mention that, well, it depends. So it will be good to actually employ a variety of policy. If you actually mention that it's good to employ a variety of policy, so let me find an empty paper to explain further. If it is good to employ a variety of policy. So the next thing that you have to ask yourself is why? Why is this good? So maybe each policy, targets at different group of audience. So you have to identify policy A is for example, you have taxes on cigarettes, so you actually target at heavy smoker, for example. Then if you have policy B, which is maybe education, to teach them not to smoke, then this you are targeting at the not second-hand smoker, light smoker in a way. And maybe policy BC, you have rules and regulation. Maybe you ban them from some of the pub area or the common area. So you actually ensure that it benefit the society, so that reduce second-hand smoke. So what I've done here is actually show using one very impromptu question or answer to show that if you were to say that it is good to employ a variety of policy, please make it a point to explain why. Because if you were to remember, in your marking scheme, there will be E1 and E2. Apparently for students who actually give me this, then I will close one eye to award them with 1 mark, 1 and 2 marks, or 1 mark. If they actually explain further with good concept use, it will be 3 and 4 marks. So it is very easy. Use the last paragraph as an opportunity to show good evaluation. Alright, yeah, the last slide that I want to show you is using cost and benefit. Also, what we actually learned from chapter market, on the topic of market failure. It will be using cost and benefit in a way to assess so whether the policy is it beneficial or not, or the action taken. So here we are looking at the objective of the different economic agent. So let me explain further. Government here, they actually play a role of reallocating the resources. So therefore what they are looking at is to make sure that the allocation of resources is effective. So this is their own objective. I hope this slide is quite clear because I know that the words are quite small. But anyway, look at the firms. So the objective of them is to maximize profit. This is what we assume that this is the traditional objective of firm in cost of production chapter, remember? So here, unless stated otherwise, so maybe you can come up with a strategy to say that, or rather, the objective of the firm is to earn long run profit. So right now what they need to do is to do a lot of marketing and to promote the product, advertisement, and to make the demand of the product more price inelastic so that in future they can increase the price to increase the total revenue, and hence assuming a cost stay constant, it will increase their profit in long run. So these are some of the scenario that we can recall for chapter 2. So what you need to identify is that they are looking at long run profit maximization. So therefore, in the short run, they will actually put in a lot of resources to come up with good advertisement to promote the product. So this could be one of the way to actually explain yourself that there are alternative strategies taken by the firms. Or another objective is to expand the market, to expand their market power. Okay. Next, individual. Individual wise, right? Not exactly individual actually. This will be household. Sorry. So what are the action taken to them? Seldom we have the case to look at the household, but anyway, just to run through, what they are more concerned with is the quality of the product. Is it good or bad? I mean, we just assume that we are auntie. So quality of the product, is it good or bad? So can I choose from a lot of products or not? Then is that the cheapest price? So these are some of the things that what the household will be interested in. But of course, if we were to look at the policy effectiveness, right, I don't think there will be a lot of question to ask about the actions taken by the household, but this is just really FYI. So that's it for the whole lecture. It's almost half an hour, but I hope that this is a good video to help you to look at the general structure and approach to answer this type of question, not only just for market failure, but basically it will apply to all type of questions asking about the effectiveness of the policy. So thank you for listening. See you.